This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Prime Minister Safir Reeb has paid a working visit of inspection to the eastern province of Sila. The African and Mediterranean Energy and Hydrogen Exhibition of Conference NAPEC 2025 has continued in the western city of Oran for the second consecutive day. And as indirect discussions continued in Cairo to try and pave the way for a ceasefire in Gaza, the Israeli army pursued its pounding of the territory, killing several Palestinians. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm your host, Miriam Bershi. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has received the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Mr. Abdullah bin Nasser Al Busairi, who handed him a letter from the Crown Prince of the Kingdom, Mohammed bin Salman. Prime Minister Safir Reeb has paid a working visit of inspection to the eastern province of Sila, instructed by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. The Prime Minister inaugurated a reinforced concrete production plant in Drah Al Hijra belonging to the state-owned company Frontale. The new plant is a major achievement for the region's industrial sector. The African and Mediterranean Energy and Hydrogen Exhibition and Conference NAPEC 2025 has continued in the western city of Oran for the second consecutive day. For more details, our colleague Masoud Sharfi is reporting.
Sessions and lectures focused on energy transition, geothermal studies and hydrogen development, with experts and executives discussing geomodeling methods, the role of hydrogen and natural gas in a cleaner energy mix, and how low-carbon technologies, efficiency solutions and international partnerships can drive Algeria's transition while maximizing its hydrocarbon resources. Throughout the day, several panels and discussions were held, among which a panel on emissions reduction and value creation in exploration and production. The President and General Manager of Occidental Petroleum Corporation, Warren Medrak, said Algeria is a core asset for Occidental Petroleum and a key focus on advancing carbon capture and enhanced oil recovery with Sonatrach.
So Algeria is a core asset for Oxy. That was defined in 2019. Core means growth and growth means value creation. Value creation is manifested by four I's, and I'll give them to you. Investigate, which means we explore. Innovate, which means we bring technology. Invest, and that's in people and in assets, and then we improve. And that's continued in everything that we do. So Algeria now is a strategic region for Oxy, and strategic means we will be introducing technology, and that's a lot because of the high quality reservoirs we have here in Algeria. Our global emissions reduction leadership teams that support direct air capture, CCUS and enhanced oil recovery, they fully believe that the technology that we have can be leveraged in Algeria, and that then supports affordable energy production, supports energy security, and then drives Algeria's climate ambitions. So we've recently been selected by Sonatrach, technically selected, and signed the Enhanced Oil Recovery MOU, which allows us to now review the EOR applicability across all of Algeria and all of the Sonatrach reservoir portfolios. We're the only company right now at scale that's doing CO2 EOR, and this is a really big part of our strategy moving forward.
During the technical sessions, experts shared insight on geothermal potential of Algerian hot springs and the latest modeling techniques, energy transition strategies combining traditional hydrocarbons and clean energy solutions, and collaborative projects in green hydrogen aimed at supplying regional and European markets. The event continues to provide a platform for networking, knowledge exchange and partnerships between Algerian energy companies and international stakeholders, positioning Algeria as a growing hub for innovation and investment in clean energy. From Oran, Masoud Sharfi to Radio Algeria International.
And as indirect discussion continued in Cairo to try and to pave the way for a ceasefire in Gaza, the Israeli army pursued its pounding of the territory, killing several Palestinians. According to the news agency Wafa, at least 10 people were killed in the Israeli bombardments carried out by the Israeli army against various parts of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli continued attacks on Gaza have over the past 2 years claimed more than 67,000 lives and tens of thousands other wounded. In this respect, the UNRWA Commissioner Philip Lazzarini reiterated his call for an immediate ceasefire and an unconditional access to humanitarian aid. He stressed that while the word marks the 2 years since the beginning of the nightmare, the inhabitants of Gaza have been confronted to destruction, displacement, bombardments, fear, death and hunger. This came as the first series of discussions held between the Palestinian Hamas and mediators ended within a positive atmosphere. Egyptian media said the negotiation was set to resume under the mediation of Qatar and Egypt in the presence of U.S. envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. The genocidal war waged by the Israeli occupying army against the Gaza Strip entered its second year today, leaving behind the world's greatest humanitarian catastrophe and a tragic reality experienced daily by the people of Gaza. Murder, famine, thirst and forced displacement for more than 730 days. On the occasion, the United Nations Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, has stressed the need for a permanent ceasefire to pave the way for peace in the Gaza Strip, and on the second anniversary of the genocidal aggression carried out by the Israeli occupying forces against the Palestinian enclave. In a statement released 2 years today, or to the day after the start of the genocidal aggression against Gaza, Antonio Guterres recalled the unwavering commitment of the UN to peace in Gaza. The statement was read by the director of the UN Information Service in Geneva, Alessandra Vellucci.
After 2 years of trauma, we must choose hope now, says the Secretary General. The recent proposal by US President Donald J. Trump presents an opportunity that must be seized to bring this tragic conflict to an end. A permanent ceasefire and a credible political process are essential to prevent further bloodshed and pave the way for peace. International law must be respected. The United Nations remains unwavering in its commitment to support peace. And the Secretary General to conclude, on this solemn anniversary, let us honor the memory of all the victims by working for the only path forward, a just and lasting peace in which Israelis, Palestinians, and all the peoples of the region live side by side in security, dignity, and mutual respect.
For his part, the Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, OCHA, Tom Fletcher, said that after 2 years, tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed, renewing the call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The statement was read by OCHA's spokesperson, Jan Leclerc.
Today, I renew my call for the unconditional, immediate release of all the hostages, and until then, they must be treated humanely. Civilians everywhere have to be protected. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed, hundreds of thousands endure starvation and displacement. So we renew the call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, for all civilians to be protected, and for humanitarian aid to flow freely at the scale needed. There's now a glimmer of hope that this can happen. We must keep it alive. Mr. Fletcher speaks about humanitarian aid must flow freely and at the scale needed. Over these 2 years, we have had more than 8,000 coordinated mission and movement requests, of which more than a quarter have been denied.
The United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF has stated that there is now no safe place in the Gaza Strip due to the attacks by the occupation army, which have been ongoing for 2 years now. A UNICEF spokesman said that children have paid the heaviest price, adding that it is an average of every child either killed or maimed every 17 minutes for the past 2 years.
For nearly 2 years now, children have paid the heaviest price in this crisis. 61,000 children have reportedly been either killed or maimed since the horrors Hamas unleashed in Israel and what followed after the disproportionate response from Israel that is still ongoing. That's an average of one child either killed or maimed every 17 minutes. This is an unacceptable, staggering figure that we still have to live with today. Children have been suffering in their bodies and their minds for way too long. They've been traumatized, exposed to horrors that no child should ever have to look at or live. They've been orphaned, they've lost their homes, they've been displaced multiple times, they've been exposed to disease and violence in a scale that is unprecedented for Gaza.
According to official sources, the Israeli occupying army has dropped more than 200,000 tons of explosives, destroying nearly 90% of the Gaza Strip. 15 vital sectors have suffered massive destruction, with direct losses exceeding £70 billion. On November 15, 1988, in the city of Algiers, history was made. In a special session of the Palestinian National Council, Yasser Arafat, leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization, stood before representatives of his people and declared the independence of the state of Palestine. More details in this report by Masoud Sharfi.
The declaration was not just words on paper, it was a symbolic act of statehood, affirming the Palestinian right to self-determination and sovereignty, rooted in international law and in the history of a people seeking freedom. The text of the declaration, written with the help of Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, was rich with references to justice, peace, and to the dream of a homeland.
وممارسة من الشعب العربي الفلسطيني لحقه في تقرير المصير والاستقلال السياسي والسيادة فوق أرضه فإن المجلس الوطني يعلن باسم الله وباسم الشعب العربي الفلسطيني قيام دولة فلسطين فوق أرضنا الفلسطينية وعاصمتها القدس الشريف.
From Algiers, Mr. Arafat declared the establishment of the Palestinian state by the power of international legitimacy embodied in the United Nations resolutions since 1947 and the exercise by the Palestinian people of their right to self-determination, political independence and sovereignty over their land. Algeria had long been a strong supporter of the Palestinian cause. From its own war of independence against French colonial rule, Algeria carried the memory of resistance and liberation. Hosting the declaration in Algiers sent a powerful message, solidarity among nations that had fought for their freedom. The reaction was swift. Within weeks, more than 70 countries recognized the state of Palestine. The United Nations General Assembly acknowledged the declaration and gave the PLO the title Palestine, with the status of an observer state. This marked a major diplomatic victory for the Palestinian leadership. Still, the declaration did not mean the creation of a fully sovereign state on the ground. Israeli occupation continued in the West Bank and Gaza, yet the 1988 declaration in Algiers shifted the political landscape. It was a turning point, moving the Palestinian struggle from armed resistance toward a strategy of international diplomacy and negotiation. For many, this moment remains a milestone, a vision of a free Palestine first spoken officially in the capital of a sister nation. Today, the Declaration of Independence is remembered as both a bold assertion of identity and a continuing reminder that the Palestinian quest for statehood is unfinished.
And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Stay tuned to Radio Algeria International for more updates.
The international event of the week.
The new peace plan for Gaza, recently unveiled by US President Donald Trump, left little hopes for an end to the war as the Israeli occupying army pursues its attacks on the Palestinian territory. It is worth recalling that it has been the scene of intense Israeli bombardments since October 2023 that caused thousands of deaths, as many wounded and disabled, mainly women and children. The Palestinian territory has been facing for 2 years a humanitarian disaster, famine, a widespread destruction and mass displacement that have drawn global attention and mounting calls for a ceasefire. The US 20-point plan aimed at ending the war and allowing in aid into Gaza offers a suspension of the Israeli military operations and the forces' withdrawal to pre-agreed lines. It stipulates that the Palestinian Hamas movement's members must be disarmed and propose a safe passage to those wishing to leave the territory. The plan, which a Hamas senior official described as biased, as he put it, as it ignores the interest of the Palestinian people, may not survive the American president's ambition to restore peace in the region. Ask if the disarmament provided for by the US president's plan for Gaza deals a blow to the Palestinians' legitimate right to self-determination. Our California-based political analyst Hamoud Salhi has this to say.
President Donald Trump's proposed plan for Gaza has a serious flaw. It undermines the Palestinian right to self-determination. One of the most concerning aspects is its proposal to establish a separate administration in Gaza, effectively detaching it from the rest of Palestine. This will not only fragment the land, but also weakens the sense of a unified Palestinian national identity. Simply put, the plan seems designed to divide both people and the territory, a move that directly undermines the broader Palestinian national project. And when viewed in a wider context, this proposal aligns closely with Israel's long-standing aim to prevent the emergence of a viable sovereign Palestinian state. The plan also avoid addressing a fundamental issue of fairness. It places demands, particularly around disarmament, solely on the Palestinians, without asking the same of the other side, the occupier, the true culprit. A more balanced and nuanced approach would have recognized the right of Palestinians to resist occupation as acknowledged under international law. At the very least, the question of disarming Palestinian resistance forces should have been left to be decided by Palestinians themselves. This is something that they could debate and decide at the level of civil society or at the level of leadership, and it could be now or later in a post-conflict situation. But this always should be always left to the Palestinians. Imposing such a condition from the outside will not only undermine the Palestinian sovereignty, but it also ignores the deeper roots of these conflicts.
The US plan for ending the war in Gaza, which President Trump said was, as he put it, potentially one of the greatest day in the history of the civilization, proposes the deployment of a new stabilization force, ISF, to maintain security and coordination with neighboring states. The document also proposes that Gaza be temporarily governed by a technocratic transitional authority overseen by an international body called the Board of Peace, chaired by President Trump and including former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. Ask if the proposal leaves no room for the two-state solution as it places Gaza under protection and a loss of role to the former UK Prime Minister, who has been discredited for his role in the war in Iraq and for lacking to achieve progress while leading the Quartet for the Middle East. Our political analyst Hamoud Salhi commented the issue.
US President Donald Trump's plan left no room for a two-state solution. It placed Gaza under international protection and assigned a role to former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, whose credibility had already been weakened by his involvement in the Iraq War and his lack of progress as head of the Quartet for the Middle East. This move also appears not accidental. It was carefully designed to counter the growing international movement to recognize an independent Palestinian state and to temper the expanding wave of global public opinion in favor of Palestinian self-determination. It also aligned with a long-standing Israeli position, one that seeks to deny Palestinians a state under a two-state solution. Under the Oslo Accord, Palestinians were expected to have achieved statehood by May 1997. The plan envisioned a viable state that would include all of Gaza and about 97% of the West Bank. That vision, however, never came to life. Successive Israeli governments, and particularly under the current Prime Minister, have worked to block any negotiations that could lead to such a state. Settlement, expansion, political division, and the absence of a genuine peace process have all contributed to keeping Palestinians without state of their own.
Although it excluded any annexation by Israel of Gaza, the U.S. plan for Gaza insists on the necessity to rebuild the devastated territory and to provide a humanitarian aid to the Palestinians. The initiatives made up of security, humanitarian, political and transitional governance elements is presented as a comprehensive package. It has resulted in reactions often swift and polarized. Mixed responses came from the Arab states and the international community. Some welcomed the plan as a potential path to peace, but many expressed serious reservations about its terms, especially the exclusion of the Palestinians and the role of external figures in governance. Asking whether the U.S. plan could alter the international community's dynamic driven by public opinion and embodied by the recognition by some major countries of the state of Palestine, our political analyst from California, Hamoud Salhi, has the following.
President Donald Trump's proposed plan for Gaza could be seen an attempt to shift diplomatic conversation, but it is unlikely to change the directions of global public opinion, which is in favor of the Palestinians. Across continent, there is deep frustration with Israel's disregard for international law and for Palestinian lives. The images of devastation in Gaza, of children pulled from rubble, of entire neighborhoods razed, have stripped away the last pretenses of self-defense that Israel uses and exposed a policy of collective punishment that much of the world no longer accepts. Trump plans, framed as a roadmap to peace, fails to confront that reality. It treats the crisis as a matter of management, not an occupation case, or for that matter, not even justice. Instead of holding Israel accountable for decades of occupation and blockade, the plan focuses on restructuring Palestinian governance under foreign supervision as if Gaza's tragedy were the fault of its victims. That approach doesn't heal, it humiliates. It asks Palestinians to surrender their political voice in exchange for aid, to accept external control as the price of rebuilding their homes. But people who have lost so much will not trade dignity for handout. Around the world, public opinion has already moved ahead of government. From Europe to Latin America, from Africa to Asia, citizens are calling for recognition of Palestine, are marching in the streets to end the genocide inflicted on the Palestinians, to demanding sanctions and to Israel's impunity. Some governments like Spain, Ireland, Norway, and others have responded by formally recognizing the state of Palestine. That momentum, as we've seen in the General Assembly of the United Nations, is growing, and no plans devised in Washington can easily reverse that.
The U.S. peace initiative for Gaza aroused many concerns, mainly the plan's lack of clarity on timelines for the Israeli troop withdrawal, the extent of the Israeli security presence, and the path to statehood for the Palestinians.
city of El Qala is known for red coral, or let's say red gold. My colleague Mohammed Barazwan will tell you more.
Despite the fact that man had been making use of it for hundreds of years, when scholars eventually decided it was time to classify the red coral from the Mediterranean, there was a lot of argument as to whether or not it was a vegetable or a mineral. Its striking color has caused it to be used for a variety of purposes, including that of ornamentation, art, medicine, and money. Today, it is mainly used for jewelry, and it is viewed as being so precious that it has been dubbed red gold. It was not until the 18th century that scientists came to understand that coral was the skeleton remains of a living organism. Initially, many thought that coral was a form of plant, a sort of underwater tree, if you will, and that the small, brightly colored creatures known as polyps that created were flowers. These polyps live in colonies and they secrete the calcareous deposits known as coral in an effort to protect themselves. Their coral branches can reach a length of 10 to 10 inches, and usually one color, though they may exhibit several different shades of that color. Red coral may be formed on any solid surface up to a depth of 800 feet, given the right circumstances. Preferably, the seawater needs to be calm, unpolluted, warm, and have a fairly high level of salinity. Thus, it is generally only found in the waters of the Mediterranean, and countries such as Algeria can benefit greatly from reaping its beautiful bounty. It can also be found off the coast of a variety of other countries such as Albania, France, Greece, Italy, Morocco, Spain, Tunisia, and Yugoslavia. There are also instances of red coral growing in the Atlantic off Cape Verde. Coral has long been prized by humankind for its incredible beauty and rarity. Red coral even more so. It has been used decoratively by kings and pharaohs, treasured as priceless family heirlooms, and looked upon as a source of a cure for all sorts of ailments. However, the exceptional value of this brightly colored byproduct of the sea has caused some to exploit coral deposits to the point of destroying the creatures that create it. Pollution has also become a serious cause for concern. In Algeria, our president